Dear friends, welcome back to Automate with Rakesh. In this video, we are going to learn about multiple different concepts that you must understand if you wanted to learn RPA testing with UiPath Studio. The very first thing, we will get an introduction to test case. We will understand what is a test case, how do you practically create a test case in UiPath Studio. We are also going to understand what is a BDD. You will see something called BDD template. We will understand the concept behind BDD template. We'll also see given when then. On this picture you can see given when then. What is this? What is the concept behind that? And how do you really use it for your test? Testing your workflows or testing your application. How do you really use it? We are going to understand. So let's get started. The very first thing, let's understand what is a test case. So test cases are one of the features in Studio that enables you to test your automations as you develop them. So the main agenda is you can create a test case. So how do you create it? You simply go to project panel, select the workflow which you like to test, right click on it, and then click on create test case. Right click and create test case. Pretty simple way. But what is the use? The main objective is that it enables you to test your automations as you develop them. I want to see if my workflow is working fine or not. I wanted to see if something it is missing, if there is something wrong that I have to still develop. All these kind of testing can be done by creating a test case. You remember, why are you really testing something? Because when you are developing a RPA project, there are three areas where a fault or the error can appear. One is your workflow itself has a problem, or the target application has some issues, or the environment where you are going to deploy your project having some issue that I have discussed in detail in the previous video. So right now you have understood what is a test case. It will enable you to test your automations as you develop them. Okay, that's all. And how you get it? Right click, create test case. I am on my UiPath Studio. I have got a pretty simple message box here. Now let's say I wanted to create a test case for a particular XAML. How you do it? Simply go to projects panel and then select your XAML. So this one is scenario 1 is the XAML name. I'm going to right click on this and then select create test case. So the moment you do this, see you have got a form. It is telling you, okay, give some name to this test case. Let me give a name called TC, let's say TC1. Okay, test case 1, and you can write your workflow name. That is the best practice. So let's say what workflow name is automate with Rakesh, whatever your login XAML, whatever your workflow you are testing, you can simply start with TC underscore and you can provide a name. So let me not provide a number here. Test case underscore automation Rakesh 1. So whatever your XAML name you can provide here. Okay. Now here it is saying your location of that test case will be this, your project folder. And then based on BDD test case. So what is this? Built-in template BDD test case. And there's something called package template test with timeout. So let's understand what is BDD test case here. BDD. So BDD stands for behavioral driven development. Okay, behavioral driven development. What is the meaning of this? Now let me tell you, this BDD term is a testing term. Anybody who is a tester or has experience with testing, they must be aware of this word BDD. BDD means behavioral driven development. BDD testing is an agile approach to software testing that uses natural language that's easy to understand. So it is saying it uses something called natural language. So what is the natural language? Okay, first thing I understood from this that BDD means it is a testing term. It's a kind of an approach which uses natural language, but I still did not get it. What is a BDD? Let me give you an example. So what is BDD? It's an approach. How will you test it? What are your steps to test something? So it defines that approach. So BDD has a standard template which follows the given, when, then structure. So BDD, what it has a standard template, given, when, then. Okay, now you are saying natural language. Now I am saying given, when, then structure to describe the behavior of the system. What is all this? One would quite get confused when they are starting for the very first time. Don't worry, I am going to give you an example. So what is this given, when, then structure which I can use to test the behavior of my system or behavior of my workflow? Okay, so given, for example, given there are items in the shopping cart. Imagine you are on a website where you are purchasing certain items from the website. So you have a shopping cart where you are keep on adding those items into that. So here it is saying, given there are items in the shopping cart, when the user clicks on the checkout button. So imagine there is a checkout button. There are certain items on the cart and you are hitting on checkout button. Now when I am hitting on checkout button, then what happens? They should be directed to the payment section. Only when you have some items and you hit on checkout button, that is where the payment page should appear, right? If there is no item and you are hitting on checkout button, should it go to the payment page? No. You have no items, then why it should go to the payments page at all? So you are checking what? Behavior of this button. In that application you are checking behavior of this checkout button, how it is behaving in different scenarios. In one scenario you have got items. So when you hit on checkout button, it is going to the payments page. In another scenario, you don't have any items and you are simply hitting on checkout button. That time it should not go to the payments page. It should give you a message, add some item. So you are checking the behavior of the button. Now read it once again. You understood this, keep this example in your mind. Now read it. What BDD stands for? BDD stands for behavioral driven development. So just imagine that checkout button. You are checking the behavior of the checkout button, how it should behave in different scenarios. So BDD is a testing. BDD testing is an agile approach to software testing. So you are testing a software that uses natural language that's easy to understand. So you saw that example, given when items are present in the shopping cart, when user is clicking on checkbox, then it should direct to payments. Given, when, then, understanding. So it's an agile approach that uses a natural language that's easy to understand. Okay, so it has a format. What is the format? Given, when, then. Given, where you have some input. When it is having item, it is not having an item. When is actually you are doing some action, like you are checking, hitting on the checkout button. And then what should be your expected output? So you are checking what? Behavior of a system, behavior of your application you are checking by performing certain action. So given, when, then. Okay, now we have slightly understood the concept given, when, then. Okay, just remember this example in your mind. This is important. Shopping cart, checkout button, payments page is coming. No item in the shopping cart, checkout button, giving you an error message saying please add items to your shopping cart. So this is a behavior you are testing. So this concept is known as, or this approach is known as BDD, behavioral driven development. Now let's get back to the UiPath Studio. In the UiPath Studio, here as you are learning, the very first thing you do is select BDD test case. Nothing to select here, mock workflow, all of this we will learn as we move forward. Right now let's focus on BDD test case. So I have selected this and I'm going to hit on create. So what would happen the moment I hit on create? What happened? You see there are 3 sections got created. Let me minimize everything. Given, when, and then. And in the when section, the workflow upon which, you remember, upon this workflow, I have right clicked and created a test case. So TC automate with Rakesh 1. So on that XAML, I have created a test case XAML. So the test case also will have, is a XAML only, .xaml XAML. Okay. So it is a test case. You can see the color of the test case would appear in green color. These are your normal workflows, UiPath workflow. This is a test case. Now what happened the moment you create a test case after you have selected BDD? So BDD has a template, given, when, then. When means what? In the when you have your workflow. You want to test your workflow. When I'm giving this kind of input, then your workflow should produce this kind of output. When I'm giving a different input, then your workflow, when you run your workflow, then it should produce a different result. Getting it? So remember this term, given some input, when you run the workflow, it should produce this kind of output. So that is the meaning, given, when, then. When is the area where you would have your workflow. To make it more easy to understand, I will always start with a pretty simple example. What we will do, let us develop an workflow which will test if the input year is a leap year or not. So what is a leap year? Generally you will have 365 days. Certain months, the February will have 29 days, like 2024 is a leap year, right? Where you would have total 366 days. So this is a leap year. So let us develop a workflow which will test if the input year is a leap year or not. So this is a simple workflow. Okay. Now there are three different scenarios you can think of. Scenario 1, if I'm providing input 2024, given 2024, when you run that workflow, then it should give the output as this is a leap year. So this is a scenario 1. Scenario 2, if I'm giving 2025 as an input, when run the workflow, then it should give me the output this is not a leap year. Okay. Scenario 3, I am writing a string 2024. When you run the workflow, your workflow, then it should give the output as this is an invalid data. So these are what? Three different scenarios. You are testing a workflow that you will be creating on UiPath Studio. It is a pretty simple workflow. We can create it quite easily. So once you create, your workflow should stand right or should pass these three tests. What is the first test I'm doing? I will be providing 2024 input. Then it should tell me this is a leap year. Then I'm going to provide 2025. Then it should say this is not a leap year. Output should say this is not a leap year. Then I'm providing something called 2024. I'm writing in string. Then it should say it should give the output as this is an invalid data or invalid entry. Okay, so this kind of three scenarios I would like to test. So why delay? Let's see how it can be done on UiPath Studio. For this, you can create a new sequence. I already have a blank XAML. Let me open that. So this is the scenario 2 automatic. This is a blank XAML file. Now let us create a workflow which is going to test if a year is leap year or not. Now for that, we need two things. Okay, one is the input. The very first thing what we need is a input. So I'm creating an argument called input, which is a string argument. Let's say somebody is passing 2024 as an input, let's say. So then what would happen? It is going to test that. So I'm creating an argument, not a variable. I'm creating an argument. Remember, you have to create all your input and output kind of variables as arguments, because while testing, you'll be passing that in that when section. You saw that. So that's why creating arguments is important. So first thing I have created is an input argument. Now let us have an assign activity. In the assign activity, what I will do, I am going to write a code which is going to test if it is a leap year or not. So what is the code I will write? Input is the variable which will have my, it is going to have the input, the year 2024. Now the very first thing what I have to do is I have to convert that input into an integer so that I can apply an expression. So first thing what I'm doing, I'm converting this to input. Now if you are providing 2024 as a string, you can easily convert that. So after converting, let me create a variable here called year. So year is a variable which will be dealt inside, but input is coming as an argument from outside. So I'm creating an argument here. Okay, so create input as an argument. So year would be a variable. So now what would happen? This, when you convert it, this will become an integer. So select as integer. Done. So now I have year is the variable which is going to hold that value 2024. Now let's click on the plus sign. Next thing, I'm going to use a if block, if activity. And in the if activity, I'm going to write the expression. So I will say year mod 4. That means when you divide it by 4, then the output should always be 0 if it is a leap year. Okay, that is the expression for a leap year. Now in the then section, what I will do, I'll create another argument called output. What is the argument? Output is the argument. And here I will make this as out. So whatever the output is coming, I want to pass it and test that whether the output is coming properly or not. So here I'm creating an argument called out and a string output. In this one, let us add one more assign activity. And here I'm going to use that output variable. And here I'm going to pass that message. So this is a test case scenario, right? This is a test case scenario. So if it is a leap year, then the message should come as this is a leap year. So I'm building that workflow. This is a leap year. Okay. All right. Now let's say if it is not equals to 0, then that is not a leap year. So I will write that in the else section. Go slow and learn, understand each thing clearly. Then what it should say? It should say this is not a leap year. So let me copy this and simply say this is not a leap year. And I'm going to save this. Now if you understand, this is also third scenario. What is the third scenario? This is a invalid data. For example, somebody is saying writing some input 2024 or some kind of a value, string value. If he provides a string value, what would happen? While it is converting, it is going to throw the invalid cast exception. It cannot cast it. So you are casting or changing the string to an integer. That is called casting. So it will give you a casting error. Now for that, what you will do, let us right click on this activity. Okay. And let me make slightly small and then right click on this and I'm going to use the try catch block. So I will say surround with try catch or control T you can do. So I've added this try catch block here. Now inside this try block, I'm going to drag this if activity and leave it here. So now what is happening? Now inside the try block, I have the assign activity. If some invalid input is given, here it is going to throw the exception. If it is proper, then it will move here and it will do the, give the proper output. If an invalid input is given, it will throw error here and it should be caught by the catch section. So let me hit on add new catch. Now in the catch, this is a what kind of a casting exception? Okay, system.invalid.cast exception. If you don't find it here, type browse for types and simply say system.invalid cast. Okay, you would find this. Click on OK. So the exception is set, and here let us put a log message activity. Let me drag and drop the log message activity, and here so this is a error, and I'm going to say exception is a variable. You can see it here by default that comes with try catch block. So I'll say exception dot, you can simply say source. Okay, or else if you want to see invalid, you can say get type. There's a method called dot get type. It will say invalid cast exception, that error it will show you. Okay, and below this I'm going to use an assign activity. Drag and drop this. And here I'm going to use the output variable. And in this scenario, what kind of output you want? You wanted to show why it is not coming. Okay, output variable, and here I wanted to pass this message, right? This is an invalid data. So I'll copy this. You can simply type it. Okay, so these are the three different scenarios that we have created. Okay, so if there is an invalid data provided, the catch section will catch it and is going to set the output value as this is an invalid data. Okay, so understood. So let me minimize all of this. Let me expand the try catch. If you provide 2024, it will be a mod year. So in the then section, it will come and it is going to set the output as this is a leap year. If it is not that, then it will say this is not a leap year. Getting it? Okay, so our workflow is created. Pretty simple workflow that we have created. Let's save it. Now I want to test it. Now this is a simple example we are taking. This is not a more practical example, but for you to understand the concept, this is necessary. But once you understand the concept, then you can apply to more practical scenarios. So for this, first thing, let's go to projects panel. How do you create a test case for any XAML? Let's say this is your XAML. You want to test it. And these are your test scenarios. Scenario one, so somebody from your project would give you, for this XAML, these are the test scenarios, do test it. So these are the scenarios that you have already got it. And you have already designed the workflow. But you want to really test it and then see whether your workflow is passing that test or not. Okay, how will you do it? Go to projects tab, select your XAML, right click on it and click on create test case. And the best practice would be TC. You can define your own best practices, but again, this is how I would follow. TC, test case, stands for test case, underscore, what is the workflow name? You give that, automate with Rakesh scenario 2. So I'll simply say 2 here. And I'm going to, by default, the BDD test case template is selected. I'm going to hit on create. Okay, I'm not going to hit on next because there's so many things, other things to learn. Right now, simply hit on create. So once it is created, let me first put this to slightly on a large scale. Okay, hope it is visible now. So what happened by default? What happened? The template, the BDD template, behavioral driven development, right? So that creates a template given, when, and then. And in the when section, the workflow that you have created has been automatically appeared here. Now here there is something called input argument. So what are the arguments you have? Import arguments. One is your input argument, which would receive the input, and there is an output argument which is going to send out the output. Okay, all right. Now the very first thing, how am I going to use the given section? Let's understand. So remember, given section is the one where you would be passing these inputs. Given is for input. Remember, what is the use of given? Given is for input. So this is all our input, right? Different inputs you are providing. So given is for input. So in the given section, what I am going to do, I am going to click on the plus sign and use a assign activity. If there are multiple inputs, then you use a multi-assign activity. Because it is only a single input for this example, I am using a single assign activity. If not, multi-assign activity for multiple inputs. Now here I have the assign activity. Now let me create a variable here. Create variable, and I'm going to create a similar. So these are the variables very local to the test case. I'm going to say input. So you can see an input variable got created. This is particular to this particular test case XAML. So once it is created, and you can see in the project panel, you will see test case automate with Rakesh 2 has been created just now. Okay. All right. Now here, what should be the input? Now I want to first test this scenario. Test scenario 1 is 2024. So here I'm going to pass 2024. Okay. And here in the workflow, once you do this, come here and click on import arguments. Now in this, whatever your input variable is, you pass it here. Instead of passing, you understanding? It will come from the given section. So in the given section, whatever inputs you have created, variables you have created, you need to pass it there. Remember, one small adjustment you have to do. This variable you have created for the given scope. All you do, change this to entire workflow. Once you change the scope, if you click on import arguments, and here you would find, if you type input here, automatically the variable will appear. Okay, so this is the input. Now let us create one more output. So once the expression comes, now I'll create another variable here, output. You can give your own name, TC output, test case output, test case input. You can provide any name. I'm keeping the similar name output. Hit on enter and hit on OK. Now what happened? This output variable is also very local here. Okay, local. So it is there part of when section. Let us change it to entire scope. Okay, now everything is set. So you are passing this input. And where this workflow is getting this input, it is getting from the given section. And then this workflow will do all the, whatever logic you have built, it is perform all that. And then finally that workflow is passing output as an out argument, and you are passing to a variable called output variable. Pretty simple. Okay. Now, once you get this output variable, you want to test the scenario. You want to test different scenarios. So what you will do in the then section, this is to test your output. Remember, given is input, then is your output, you verifying your output, and when is your workflow. Pretty simple. In the then section, what you do here, let us add few activities. For this, I am going to use a switch case because there are 3 different cases we will find, right? So I'll use a switch case inside the then section. Okay, expand the then section, expand this, then you can drop the activity. Now here, what we will do, let's say I'm going to provide the input variable. And here in the add new case, I'm going to say there are 3 different inputs we are providing, right? 2024 is the first input we are going to provide as per our documentation. Okay, what is the next scenario? Next scenario is you will be providing 2025. Okay, let's create that. Done. Now the third scenario is what? 2024. These are the 3 test scenarios. So what I'm doing, I've created a switch activity, and here I'm providing all these values. Now this, why this error is coming, do you know? Because you need to change the type argument to a string. Okay, everything is gone. 2024, click outside. Next is 2025, click outside, and then the third one is 2024 written in string. So these are the 3 different test input cases. Now how will you verify if your output is coming as expected or not? Let's say if somebody is providing everything, I'm writing in the then section. Okay, now if somebody is providing input as 2024 for testing your workflow, then what should happen? What kind of output we are expecting? Now how do you verify? There are multiple different verification activities are present for test, for your UiPath test automation. There are certain activities called testing activities or the verification activities. We'll learn all of this activity one by one. Right now, the example is simple, and I'll be using a very first one is verify expression. Let's drag and drop this one. What I'm using verify expression. We'll also learn how to use control attribute. We'll also learn how to use expression with operator, verify range, all of that we will see. But for now, let's go with this very first activity called verify expression. Now here, what expression I will type? Remember, here the output variable is going to contain the real output coming out of the XAML file. So what I will do in the verify expression activity, I'll be using the output variable, and if the input is 2024, enter. If the input is 2024, then as per the specification of the test case, the value should say this is a leap year. Correct? If somebody is providing 2024, then the value must say this is a leap year. This is the expectation. Okay. Now these are a couple of properties I'm going to talk slightly later. For now, simply use the verify expression. Now if somebody, let us copy this. Now if someone is entering 2025 as the input value, then what this should say? This should say this is not a leap year. Right, as per the scenario number 2. So simply write it here. Now if somebody entering the value 2024 as the input, then what the output should say? This is an invalid data. So it is a best practice to, let me copy this, write those words correctly, because how you have written the expression, right, in your workflow, the sentence should match. Let me copy it again. This is invalid data and paste it here. Okay, so what I have done till now, I'm learning a new activity called verify expression. Now how this works, if the input is 2024, then the verify expression should verify the output variable which is coming from this workflow should contain the value what? This is a leap year. If somebody is entering 2025, if the input is 2025, then the output variable should contain the value this is not a leap year. If the input is 2024 written in string, then the output should contain the value this is a invalid data. So these are the three different scenarios. Clear? Now we have understood. Let us minimize everything. Then section, when section, and given section. So in the given section, what we have is the input. We'll keep on changing this input. First, we'll test the first scenario by providing 2024 as an input. Then we'll put 2025. Then we'll put that string. Then it will run the workflow. When it runs the workflow, then the output will come in the output variable. And in the then section, we are checking the output value. How we are checking? We are creating a switch case and we have provided the input variable and three different inputs we are giving, three different test scenarios, 2024, 2025 and a string variable. If the input is 2024, then the output variable should be equals to, this is a leap year. If it is 2025, then this is not a leap year. And then this third one is, this is the invalid data. This is how it should appear. Now let me run it. It will be much easy for you to understand. Okay, let me quickly run this. So it is a 2024 we are providing the input. Look at the given section. Okay, so the execution completed, the verification has done. Now okay, the verification has been done. You can see the verification has been done. Now what happened? The output says verification passed. So your test case, your test scenario 1 passed. So what is the result of your test? Passed. So what it said? What it said? Verification passed. The expression output is equal to, this is a leap year, return true. So we have tested it, and if you are providing the input of 2024, the expected output is coming. Interesting? Great. Now let's do one thing. Let's simply change the value here to 2025 as second scenario. Again, let us run it. Okay. Okay, so the run is complete. Let's go to the output. Even the verification passed for the second scenario, the expression output, this is not a leap year, return true. So even this scenario it can handle. So this is working fine. So result is passed. The second scenario is also passed. Now if it cannot handle, then it will become failed. If you haven't written the logic properly, then it will not give that output. It will fail. I'll show you that. We will delete something and show you how it fails. Scenario 3, if somebody is entering 2004 as the input. So what you do, go back to your studio. And in the given section, you will simply change the value here. Okay, now let us run it again. Okay, so here you can see the execution is complete, verification passed, the expression output is equal to, this is invalid data, return true. So even the third verification has passed. What was the error? System, I have logged an error, right? Get type, if you remember, system.invalid cast exception, the error has come, but again your verification passed. It is able to handle that particular situation. So it is saying it has returned the value called, this is an invalid data. So it is handling the situation quite well. Clear? So now both three scenarios has been passed. So what happened? Now your workflow is ready to move. So now you will have lot many questions. Rakesh, who will give all these scenarios? Now as a developer, when you are developing, you are the one who understands the process entirely, and you are the one who will be looking at different scenarios. Your clear understanding of the project, of the workflow that you are creating is a must. If you understand clearly, you know what are the different variations that can come in your workflow and you would like to test it. Okay, so this test scenarios you will be preparing, you will be seeing. If the client is not giving, it will be your responsible to understand different scenarios and test your workflow so that it is really strong and it can handle any kind of situations. Do I need to test all my workflows? It is the best practice. if you would like to do it. If you feel certain by debugging, you can simply see that you don't want to create a test case and do it, it's okay. But again, couple of workflows where it is complex scenario, you have multiple different scenarios. In those cases, you would be going for a creation of a test case and test it in a proper way. Okay guys, so as we move forward, all these concepts, knowledge and experience will come. But again, my main aim was to help you understand given, when, then and how it works. Hope this should be clear. Now what we will do in our main workflow, we will change certain logic. For example, I am going to remove this logic. For else I have written this is not a leap year. Let's say I'm going to comment out. Okay, I've commented out and I'm going to save it. Now what would happen? This activity will not work. Now for the second scenario, if I'm providing my input as 2025 and click on save, because that workflow I have saved and the same workflow is called here. Now if you run this, what would happen? The output will say failed, because your workflow doesn't have that logic to give that kind of output, so it will fail. So look at it. Okay, so the execution has completed. Now if I go to my output, what happened? This says verification failed. Let me copy this to a notepad so that you can see it in detail. So what it said, verification failed, the expression output, this is not a leap year, returned false. That means you have not kept any logic for this. So when your verification failed, that means you have to go back and improve your workflow. Okay, I hope with this example you have got complete understanding of given, when, then, what is the concept behind this. This is a BDD template known as BDD template, popularly known as BDD template, behavioral behavioral driven development, BDD. Okay, you are developing based on the behavior of your, so you can see based on my workflow behavior, because I got an error here, then my main job is to go and check what I'm missing. So here, okay, this is one I have kept as commented out, I have not created a logic. I'll go and enable that, and once everything is done, if I save this and run it again, it should pass this time. Okay, so this is how you'll be doing the testing. So you can see if I go to the output now, what happened? Output said passed. Let me write it below this. So verification passed, the expression output, this is the expression you have written, output equal to this is not a leap year, return true. So this has passed. So it has come in green in color. Alright guys, so thank you so much for watching this. Thanks for your patience. Do not forget to give it a like and let me know if this video helped you to understand the concepts in the video agenda clearly or not. Please do type and let me know in your comment. Thank you guys. Let's meet in our next video.